want to give Marilee a chair? You mind if I put this right here?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Can you folks still see me? She's sitting there. Yeah.
Not if you're standing.
Nice to meet you. Are you coming from Western Library?
Yes.
Where is that?
It's Western University in London, Ontario, which is about 2 hours. That's Western Southwestern.
Okay. I'm coming from Providence, Rhode Island, from a river library at Brown University. I saw the slide.
I used to be a music librarian, so I knew Ned Quist.
Oh, really?
I know you retired a few years ago.
You're welcome to plug it.
Yes.
Might be useful to make sure no one trips over that.
Yeah. I might need it in the other room. Let me see if Marilee's okay. Just here. That maybe?
Yeah, that's better. It's another floor.
Yeah. Hey there.
Hey. Okay.
So you're good as long as that's the extent of how far.
Okay.
So as long as here and in, you're fine.
Oh, wow. So I'm basically restricted. So if I wander off camera.
You
that's-
can go as far as you can go as far as here. So as long as you're like, don't go beyond here. You can wander. You can move up. But it's basically going from.
Does everybody know Andrew Lee, by the way? Like the amazing videographer. All of our videographers are just so amazing. He travels with
3 cameras.
at least.
There's 2 of them right
That's
there.
all.
At least. All right, you're set.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to see you all today. This is really great. We're going to do some introductions. I want to kind of set some expectations here. This is not a Learn to Edit Wikipedia workshop. This is something that was developed during our Wikipedia and Libraries course that we ran last year, and into the beginning of this year, I guess. No, it wrapped up at the end of last year. Time is just flying by. And this is a really kind of take Wikipedia slow approach. So what we'll be doing today is kind of going through how Wikipedia is constructed, the ethos behind Wikipedia, and it's really more of an attempt to get people to understand Wikipedia from the inside out, and also to bring your skills as librarians and humans to bear on understanding the encyclopedia. So, so we're not going to be doing like, kind of like, here's the edit button, let's create an account, let's get going. We can do some of that at the end if people want to, and there's an edit-a-thon later, and you can get some hands-on help with editing, but I think it's really helpful to understand kind of at a deep level what's going on with Wikipedia and how it's constructed. And I want to be sure that I introduce, I feel like, how many of you, when you're in Wikipedia land, feel like a complete fraud? I do, like, most of the time. And I feel like a complete fraud being the instructor in this course because Monica Shangle-Jones, who is our fantastic Wikimedian in residence during the course, was one of the co-developers of these materials. So really, she should be up here doing the instruction, but I was trying to be bold and do this as an in-person instruction. So the course was an online, so the Wikipedia plus Libraries Better Together course was an online course that we did with funding from the Knight Foundation and the Wikimedia Foundation. We had capacity to train hundreds of librarians. It was aimed at U.S. public libraries. We had over 200 librarians go through the course together as a cohort. And it was an online course. It ran over a 10-week period. I think it was really successful. People got a lot out of it. And what we really wanted to do was to equip people with an understanding of what Wikipedia is so that they could create their own engagement opportunities for people at their libraries or with their peers. And some of the things that we found in the course really surprised us. So, one of the things I would say that, and Monica and I are both going to be talking tomorrow about the course more in depth, but I think one of the things that really surprised me was that a lot of the people, their engagement plan was to, oh, hey, and here's one of our course participants. We're going to have slides of you. Are you Samantha? No. Oh, wow. You look so much like Samantha, and I know Samantha. There's one of our course participants is attending. So nobody in here is Samantha, right? Okay, good. Did any of the rest of you take the course online? Or I know we have some guides who were attending the conference. So
she's also presenting about what she did.
Yeah. One of the things that surprised me was that there were a lot of people who wanted to use what they learned in the course to teach their colleagues what they have learned. And that was kind of like the biggest surprise to me, is that people wanted to spread the knowledge, not with their patrons or lead edit-a-thons or do other types of things, but just share with colleagues because they found it so useful. And I thought that was a really kind of great outcome of the course. Okay. These are some of my rules for Wikipedia and things that I try to remember on a day-to-day basis. So I thought I would share them with you as kind of ways to hopefully empower you. And you will come up with your own rules. And some of you who do edit or navigate around Wikipedia may also have your own little rules, and I would love to hear those. But one thing that, I think I was really afraid to hit the edit button. It was kind of like this big shining red thing that I thought, I'm certainly going to break things, and I'm going to draw attention to myself, and some bad thing is going to happen. You really cannot break Wikipedia. Don't worry about it. Small edits are great. I think a lot of people come in thinking, I'm going to create, we've heard a lot about gaps on Wikipedia, and certainly there are a lot of gaps, and people think, I'm going to create an article about the thing that's missing from scratch. And that's a really hard thing to do, and if that's the thing that you really want to do, you will get there. But small edits are great, and if all you do is make small edits, that's also really wonderful and a really welcome and lovely contribution. There's no ownership of articles. Wikipedia is in a state of becoming. I think that was Monica's phrase for it, and I love that. So their articles will always change, they're never finished, and you're a contributor in that space. Everything is every contribution is really important. We'll see some of that when we look at article development. There's no one correct way to do things. This is both wonderful and also enormously frustrating, because if you ask 5 different Wikipedians, you could get 5 different answers for the right way to do things. But there's also a lot of flexibility, and it's basically using what you know and your skills as librarians and your skills as humans to make good judgments. And then if you're in doubt, ask yourself, is what I'm doing making Wikipedia a better place? So I think a lot of people who are in libraries or cultural heritage institutions want to make sure that their libraries and their collections are well represented within the encyclopedia. So the first thing that people may do is want to create an article about their library or about collections in their library, about an important person who's related to their library. And when you're doing that, just ask yourself, is this the only thing I want to do and then get out, or do I want to contribute to the project on an ongoing basis? And I think if you can be honest with yourself about your intentions and try to contribute as best you can, that's a really good thing. And the gnome is there because the small edits is, a lot of people consider themselves to be wiki gnomes, which are people who kind of sit in the background and make just really small, do grammatical read-throughs and just make small contributions. And that gnome activity is really useful. So I like the gnome. So our course, as I said, was aimed at public libraries and Wikipedia. There wasn't anything in the course that I think was really, if we were going to do the course again and aim it at academic libraries, I don't think that the course materials would be really all that very much different. We really aimed it at public libraries because we felt that public libraries really need a lift. A lot of academic libraries are already engaged and involved in wiki efforts, and so we really marketed this towards public libraries to make sure that they very intentionally felt welcome. And we really tried to lift their voices up because we could see that a lot of academic librarians were already engaging and have positions where they could easily engage in this. I want to pause here because I dove right in without finding anything about you guys. And so I'd like to kind of go around the room and have people introduce themselves. And if you're at a library, I'd love to hear what kind of library you're at, and also like to hear what you hope to get out of our time today. So we'll start with Honor over here.
Hi, I'm Honor Moody. I'm a metadata creation manager at the Harvard Library Information and Technical Services Unit. I have been, I actually started editing. I've been involved in some Wikipedia edit-a-thons. We had several at my previous position. The Schlesinger Library, where we focused on basically on women in different aspects of it, and did a lot of stuff from our collections. So have some experience with kind of setting up edit-a-thons in that context, and have edited the occasional Wikipedia article. I tend to have edited more Wikidata, and I'm more interested in Wikidata in general, which is like maybe not something I should necessarily admit. And I actually started editing Wikidata because there is a authority record creation tool that slurps up Wikidata information, and I had a like old school info box that. So even though the date was there, I would actually have to like type a whole bunch more. So it was easier for me to create a Wikidata statement with a birth date for this person than it was to like manually either edit the Wikipedia article or the authority record that I was creating. And that's kind of the context in which I kind of am most sort of into sort of the various Wikimedia projects. But I've now become I've become really excited about some of the opportunities for Wikibase in separate instances of Wikibase for different kinds of projects, both for library data and for basically a couple of sort of other kinds of data, so project data. So that's me.
I'm Bill McMurray. I'm an administrator on Wikipedia. I'm not a librarian. I'm one of those gnomes. I do a lot of things. So, while ignore all rules is one of the rules, it means that's not totally true. There are guidelines. We like to have some consistency. There's a manual of style. So a lot of my gnoming edits are to make corrections to things that aren't done according to the, there's got to be a good reason to not do something according to the general practices. So I do a lot of gnoming, and I'm just sitting in here I'm curious to see what Marilee's talk is going to be
I know,
about.
we all want to see what each other have to say. Yeah.
I'm Lily Berkheimer. I'm the Digital Projects Coordinator for the Ohio History Connection here in Columbus. We have a public archives and library, but that's not directly what I am generally working on, but I'm interested to hear how an organization like ours might be able to make some of these improvements.
Hi, I'm Carrie Cullen. I work in a health sciences library at a state university, and I'm a coordinator for the Florida Librarians of Wikipedia. Currently kind of getting more into the Wikidata side of things. So.
I'm Chief Nana. I'm at Harvard with Anna in the State Department. I don't have as good a reason for being here. I've been dabbling a little bit into OCLC wiki-based pilots. I see a lot of potential there for libraries to take that up as a means of doing things that they now do in other ways. And trying to understand better the sort of overall wiki style sort of environment.
And your voice is so familiar to me from Karen's metadata manager's calls. I've been a note taker on Karen's metadata manager's calls many times, so I've heard your voice on the phone so many times. It's lovely to see you.
I thought I was keeping a low profile.
I'm Sarah Newell. I work at OCLC along with Marilee and others here. My background is in academic libraries, and I've been involved in the project that Non mentioned, and I'm just really interested about how people talk about this and what others are doing with these tools.
Eric Childress, also at OCLC, and gave a little bit of support to the project that we use Wikibase for. What I'd love to get is, I'm an absolute beginner, but the things that I probably know the most about and can contribute to the articles for are things that have a conflict of interest on. So how do you thread that in?
Yeah. We'll talk about conflict.
My name is Terry Butterworth, and I am a librarian and archivist at OCLC in the corporate library there. I've edited 2 articles based on an impetus we had in our division to just get ourselves involved in it. I want to learn a little bit more. I'm also the cataloger for all of our stuff, so I'm trying to look at relations and authorities and other areas where I can enrich the materials that we have. But I also like to just dive in and what are my interests and what are the pop culture things that I want to help improve and just try to do it work related and for fun.
Yeah, sure.
I'm Jerry Odell. I don't work at OCLC. I'm an academic librarian at IUPUI. It's in Indianapolis. I'm an open access advocate. I'm pretty new to wiki stuff. My first Wikipedia edit was a one-lib, one-ref drive, and that was a lot of fun. And my colleague, who will introduce herself in a second, kind of sucked me into a lot more projects. And I've been doing a lot of contributions with Wikidata lately.
My dailies. I also work at IUPUI as a digital initiative metadata librarian. And I've been involved with wiki projects for a while, but now more so with Wikidata. That's something I really think everyone should be involved with. That's pretty much it.
I'm Misty Eldro. I am a librarian. I work here in Columbus, Ohio at the Upper Arlington Public Library. I've worked in academic and special libraries as well. And I have a knitting project with me too. Thank you for being the first one to bust one out. I'm actually here for a couple of reasons. One is sort of philosophical because I also teach cataloging and metadata courses through OhioNet, local library services organization here. And I'm really interested in the sort of the applicability of wiki editing philosophy as a way to think about consortial cataloging. And so that's something I kind of want to transition into. I'm also the first person to be contributing name authority headings for our consortium in several years. And so that really leads into having other sources available. So.
So I'm Christine Franz-Carasso, Metadata Technologies Program Manager at Harvard Library Information and Technical Services. I brought a sewing project that I'll bust out in solidarity with the knitting project. So I've largely, I haven't done a lot in Wikipedia. Most of my edits have been in Wikidata, big surprise for a metadata librarian. Most of my interest in Wiki came through the Wikibase project that Honor and Non already mentioned, as well as some work on digital research, digital scholarship projects, where we're drawing on that kind of data. And so I'm here mostly to get more context for Wikidata projects that I'm already involved in particular the linked data for protection Part 2 Mellon-funded grant project that Honor and Non and I are on. Which has a Wikidata component, and I want to get a sense of like the Wiki ecosystem, and also to learn how the Wikimedia community works together. Because as we, delve into these like broad community-based and possibly crowdsourced sorts of projects, I think, adapting your sort of academic library mindset of like, you make decisions by joining committees, and then you get invited to other committees to make more decisions. And so, like, I have no experience running editathons. I need to learn more about like crowdsourcing, but especially how to frame the value and the philosophy of that work to other metadata librarians, because there's, obviously there's a lot of opportunity there and a lot of enthusiasm, but also like anxieties and like, just the kinds of just understanding where it falls into like the landscape of our work.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm coming from Brown University. I'm at the John Carter Brown Library, which is a library that's all things colonial, from the discovery of the Americas to the mid-1800s. And I'm here because the library is trying to do a better job at getting its materials out there in a meaningful way on Wikipedia and in other in Wikimedia Commons. And so I'm here to kind of understand how we can create and foster a bond and do a good job at that. So,
I'm Monica Fazakosh. I'm from Western University in Canada, and I'm a student engagement outreach / UX librarian. And I got into sort of Wikimedia projects through a colleague of mine, Stacey Allison, who we noticed there wasn't much content in Canadian music unless you were, Bryan Adams or Celine Dion or Arcade Fire, and even they don't have that much. So it's so we decided to do sort of a Music in Canada initiative for Canada 150, and Stacey had knowledge. I had like zip. I came from. I'm like, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's do this. So I've been learning, and we did it last year, and it I think it happened at six or seven places across the country. We're wanting to keep moving with this project, so it wasn't a one-time thing. So for me, it's part of that and building the ties, like sort of building ties with our colleagues across the country, as well as within my own library, where I see so much potential for exactly sort of the things that you're both saying. How do we learn more about the sort of the Wikimedia ecosystem to be able to talk to colleagues and archivists and things like that on how we can best collaborate on various projects.
Hi, my name is Ron Sexton. I'm a librarian / researcher at the Carnegie Corporation, New York.
I got active in the local chapter of Wikimedia user group in New York City, and this was my first conference. I was trying to hear your talk, I think 2 years ago, at Internet Librarian, so I'm glad I found
Oh, okay. Oh, great. This is the same presentation I gave at Internet Librarian.
Yeah.
Exactly, it's the same slide. I'm so happy you're
I
here.
noticed it's always Knight Foundation and primary, well, I want to make sure our foundation, that the grantees, and we're always much ahead of our program officers, find this with the, as a manuscript tool for dissemination.
Great.
My name is Stephanie Hayes. I'm a librarian at Emerson University, which is a small academic library or university outside of Columbus. We mainly use Wikipedia for reference and instruction purposes, but we want to do a little bit more at the university. We've also had some faculty interested in incorporating editing within assignments, writing assignments especially. So we're hoping to be able to support that in the future as well. I've not edited anything.
Hi everyone, thanks for introducing me earlier, Marilee. My name is Monica Shannon-Jones, and I got involved in Wikipedia at the beginning of my doctorate program. I'm a PhD candidate in communication at UC San Diego, and I went to a feminism and technology edit-a-thon in 2012. And since then, Wikipedia has been a part of my academic journey, and then in 2017, I joined OCLC for the 18-month project to design the Wikipedia Plus Libraries curriculum, which the slides today have been adapted from. And I just wanted to plug that any of you can use these slides. After the course finished last year, we spent the remaining time on the project really curating and adapting the course materials for anyone to use them under a CC BY-SA 4.0 license. And I'll be talking a little bit more about how we approached kind of the pedagogy of the course. For me, my training is in feminist theory, so using kind of principles of feminist pedagogy to inform the development of that course, and then how you can use it to adapt it for yourselves. I'll be talking about that tomorrow, and it'll be really great for all of you to experience that today with Marilee. So, thank you. It's nice to be here and see all of you.
Okay, well, so the screen's gone away.
One more.
Oh, one more. No, two more. Sorry.
I'm Jeff Young. I work in OCLC's Office of Research, so there's a lot of OCLC. I've been involved with a lot of OCLC's linked data efforts, but they all kind of end up as these brands, and so my interest in Wikidata is just kind of seeing the big picture. It's like, oh my gosh, these things fit together in this nice, neat way, and you know, in a sensible way. We don't have to debate the reality of things anymore, because that's just tiresome. The whole technology stack is just so open and flexible and reusable, and the community that's built up around it is like so, you know, flexible and forgiving. It's, you know,
Except when they're not, but.
I'm sure people are, oh, we are. But, you know, it's a debate. It's not a, you know, here's what we're doing, and it's so nice.
Wow.
I'm Ron Fernandez. I have many hats. Resource development and e-learning librarian at Prince George Community College in Maryland. And I have been but I'm also on Wikipedia. I'm also on the board of Wikimedia District of Columbia. It's one of those local chapters user groups that you keep hearing about. So if you need any assistance, you know, please feel free to draw on your local expertise, even if you're not in the city with a user group. You can call on the nearest one or us or whatever, and we'll help you out.
Oops.
Oh, you did it again. I'm gonna let technical support take over two things. We're not gonna talk about Wikidata at all. It becomes like a huge disappointment, but yesterday was chock full of Wikidata. There's gonna be a ton of Wikidata presentations. You are definitely in the right place. So, and I should say that this session kind of follows sort of unconferencey open technology session. So if you feel like you're in the wrong place, take your 2 feet and walk over to the right place, and I will not be offended at all. I know that Columbus and this conference in particular have a lot to offer, and if you feel like you're in the wrong place for whatever reason, then take yourself on out of here, and that's all good. As Monica said, the course materials are available for people to use. Some of you may feel like you're in kind of a train the trainer mode and you just want to kind of get a preview of what the course materials are like. When I did teach this class at Internet Librarian, I had a somewhat smaller group of this. I had maybe 10 people, and I recruited 2 local Wikipedians to come and be sort of the co-experts in the room, and that was really a helpful model. So if any of you are thinking about doing a workshop like this, I'd encourage you to try to find some either colleagues who are, somewhat familiar with Wikipedia and Wikipedia cultural norms, or to reach out to your local Wikipedia community. So I think that that's a really good model for teaching a course that's like this.
I'm waiting for that to
Pushing that.
stop
Oh,
blinking,
okay.
then I'll turn
Pushing
it
it
on.
first, stop blinking. So what I was gonna, my next slide is to introduce the Wikipedia and Libraries project team, basically to make the point that this course was developed not in isolation, but with a project team. There were 5 of us at OCLC who worked on the project, not all of us full-time. Monica was the person who was, I think, kind of the most full-time on the project. There was also a project coordinator. So part of the reason that the course, I think, was so great and went so smoothly is that we had a lot of resources that were devoted to it, and that was thanks to the support of the Knight Foundation and the Wikimedia Foundation. Did you have a question?
No, it's okay.
Oh, okay. And, oh God, we've got an update for you. No. That is not what I want to hear.
You wouldn't turn the
Maybe
mirroring?
if I go out of.
Yeah, I got out of here, so can you turn the mirroring so maybe it's functioning, please? You do run Windows? Okay, so that is related to your desktop. Oh, here we go. Duplicate.
Is it duplicate that I want?
Or I don't know how you want to do it.
second.
Well, there it is. Whatever you want to do. Whatever you like. Oh, you want to do the
So crazy. Oh, no.
so second screen only is going to turn off your laptop. So you want something else, either duplicate or extend. Extend. Extend? It's a weird option. It's extend. Down. Hold on. Oh, up. There you go. Okay, so try presenting now from whatever you set in PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay, so try presenting and see what happens.
There you go.
Is that one?
Ta-da.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Oh, no, no worries. I think it's
And I
because the
think it's
cable's
meant
heavy, so it's way
to
down.
sleep or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great, cool. So anyhow, there was a bunch of us. We also had, so even before the course started, we also had an advisory group which was made up of people from the Wikimedia DC chapter and the Wikimedia NYC chapter, who helped us kind of talk about sort of project ideas and what we wanted to do. And then once the course got going, we had these Wikipedia guides. So throughout the course, we were really supported in a very big way by the volunteer community. Rob was one of our guides. I was a guide. Monica was a guide. So we had the course materials. We had kind of live online course time, and then we had a chat room that was done through Moodle, where people could connect with one another and connect around assignments. And the course guides were active in the Moodle sessions. But today, you guys are all going to be acting as course guides for one another. So we're going to have some discussion time, time to talk about some of the sort of exercises that we were going to give you. So that's how that was going to roll. And again, it was really helpful, and a lot of these people are at this conference. So it's awesome to see all of these people. So we did our introductions. We're gonna spend some time diving into the 5 pillars of Wikipedia. I'm sure many of you have heard of those. We're gonna do kind of a slower walkthrough through them. A lot of times they're kind of put up on one slide. Maybe you might talk about how there's no firm rules and how that's so interesting, but we're gonna kind of walk through each of the 5 pillars separately. We're gonna talk about notability and conflict of interest, because I think that those are 2 topics that librarians in particular, well, I think they're topics that are of interest to everybody, but I think particularly in our own context, that I think somebody even brought up conflict of interest. Was it Eric brought up conflict of interest? I think that is something that definitely people grapple with, and that there's good ways of understanding and thinking about it. Defining and assessing article quality is something that I think that we did a really good job of in our class, and something that I haven't seen in a lot of other training contexts, is kind of how to understand what Wikipedia is desperately trying to tell you, and the signals may be a little subtle for you to pick up on. So, and then assess articles, and if we have time, we can do a citation hunt and add a citation, but honestly, I don't know that we'll get to that. But the assessing articles thing, we definitely will get to. Okay. And that looks like a repeated slide. Oh no, that's a slide from our. Okay, so so at the beginning of our course, we did a survey about what staff wanted out of the training, and we've gone through and talked about in this group what people want. If you guys were the survey, there would be a big chunk of this would be Wikidata. That would be different. But you can see kind of some resonance with, I think, what people here wanted, being able to cite their collections, highlight their collections like Maria was talking about, and others talk about navigating conflict of interest, editing basics, event organization, and then information literacy was actually kind of a big topic, and something that I think a lot of librarians are interested in. So why are we here? I think is to kind of coming out of that slide was to talk about mission alignment between Wikimedia projects, Wikipedia in particular, and kind of what librarians do. To meet patrons where they are, especially when organizing events that will interface with patrons, or talking to patrons about their information literacy needs, and just generally engaging with the community. And that's both your community at your institution, but also the Wikimedia community. And I think somebody raised kind of understanding, kind of peeling back the onion on what that community is. So mission alignment, one of my frustrations is that the library community doesn't have a mission statement. ALA has a mission statement, and various state library associations and stuff have a mission statement. But if we had a mission statement, I think it would look pretty similar to the vision and mission statements of the Wikimedia Foundation, which is to help people freely access and share information online, and also to empower and engage people around educational content. So we had a speaker at an OCLC event who asked me that question about, like, what's the mission statement for the library community, and we kind of that really caught me off guard, that we don't have kind of a collective mission statement. But that's, I guess, not surprising, because we all come under different umbrellas. So is this something that resonates with you guys? I mean, when you look at this, do you see the work that you do reflected in that? As librarians? Nodding? Yeah. I definitely do. And I think when we get into the schools, we'll see more resonance. The other thing that I think that we have in common is that we're really made up of people, right? It's libraries are, yes, they're about collections, but the collections are there for people, or the services are there for people, and they're given and delivered by people. And Wikipedia and other Wikimedia projects are all very much made up of people. And it's really important to realize that there's a community behind both of these things, both libraries and Wikipedians are both made up of people. Somebody here has a UX background. Wikipedia has just such a very humble interface, so it's definitely not the power of the platform is not in how it looks. It's really the people in the community behind it that generate the content.
Although the UX thing is not even UI, it's for the people. Like that's the whole thing. It's who is your community and can they get what they
Yeah. And the UX around, I mean, we could have,
Yeah.
somebody could write a dissertation about this. The community, the Wikimedia community is very resistant to changing that UX. So even despite user studies that show that, you know, if you change the UX for Wikipedia, it would be better in some way, the community very much resists that. So it's kind of, it's interesting. I think we see this in our libraries and our library systems too. No, but we need this. We need
Yes.
this. Yeah.
Yes. But it's not about us. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, power is in the people. Another thing to realize is that some of those people are librarians. Some of the very long-term Wikipedians are librarians. So Bob Keselowski works at the New York Public Library. He's a curator. He's a music curator. He's also an active member of the Wikimedia New York City chapter, and really sees himself as being in both worlds, as being both a librarian and a Wikipedian, and really takes pride in being able to use his knowledge about music collections and being able to leverage the collections that he helps curate to contribute to Wikipedia. So he's one of our librarians that Wikipedia has just a lovely story, and one of the things that we were able to do in this class is to highlight and foreground some of those stories. Meeting patrons where they are, this is what really interests a lot of people in contributing to Wikipedia, and particularly highlighting their libraries, their library collections, things that relate to their library collections, is to be visible on the open web, which libraries are often not very visible on the open web. You can see what the stats are for Wikipedia. It really blows away things, even like very, very popular library websites. So if you think about the Library of Congress as being a popular website, which it definitely is, it falls far, far below the fold of something like Wikipedia. So I think that that's something that motivates a lot of us to think about why we should be active and visible on Wikipedia. A lot of people also think about Wikipedia could be a jumping off point for information literacy. And you talked about, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Did you talk about education? Wikipedia and education? Yeah, so do you know about the WikiEDU? There's a separate foundation that works with higher education in the US, and they focus on incorporating Wikipedia into writing assignments. So they're actually very closely, I think, aligned. I wish that they would be more closely aligned with what libraries do, because they're very much focused on using Wikipedia as an information literacy tool. So getting students engaged with, and I think a lot of librarians are interested in this too. It's a really good opportunity to, if you understand how Wikipedia articles are created and what the process is, you can use Wikipedia as a great teaching tool to talk about what is information literacy, what are credible sources on the open web, how can you assess the quality of kind of anything that you're seeing online. So we have some librarians here from the Glenside, Pennsylvania Free Library, who partnered with some colleagues at Penn State to do 1-hour information literacy sessions that pivoted around Wikipedia. So these were also other stories that we really highlighted in our course. This was an article that was timely at the time. It's probably about a year old at this point, or maybe even a little, oh no, it's from June 19, 2017. This came out right when we were putting our course together, and showed that writing Wikipedia articles was actually very effective in helping to teach information literacy skills. So for those of you who are interested in information literacy in particular, I think that some of the work that WikiEDU and some of the stuff that they're putting out is really helpful. They have a lot of really helpful. Rob, you've worked with WikiEDU, right?
Yes.
Do you have anything to add about?
Not really. I mean, I could talk about really briefly the nuts and bolts of it. Like basically, they have experienced Wikipedians that will go into Wikipedia and interact with the students and help them with any weirdness that happens, with advice or that kind of thing. So the teacher doesn't have to become a librarian or whoever doesn't have to become a Wikipedia expert to be able to engage with Wikipedia in the classroom.
Yeah, so they've got a really great staff. They've got a really great set of tools that help them manage classrooms full of students, and they work with instructors to come up with assignments that would mesh well with that. You've worked with them as well.
I have too.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you guys are interested in more information about Wiki, and I think that they're going to be presenting here also.
Yeah, Sage is here, who's with Wiki.
Yeah, Frank and
Yeah, and Jamie, they'll be presenting tomorrow too.
Yeah. So just like pro tip, if you're interested in Wikipedia, look for the WikiEDU people. They're here and they're awesome. Okay. So here are some things that may motivate you to, maybe we can kind of go through this and talk about what things kind of motivate you, or if there's things that would motivate you that aren't on this list. Anyone? Yeah.
One other one to maybe add to it is sort of in the redressing imbalances is also part of the whole sort of decolonization of the internet and working on issues with that within this community as well.
Yeah, and there's a whole issue with biases and sources as well. And
that's exactly what I was talking. What are you going to accept if we're using this whole Western?
It's a huge problem. Definitely being mindful of those issues, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Are there things here that you feel like particularly motivate you? Yeah.
Well, in our case, our library has a lot of cultural patrimony that was taken in the 19th century from other countries, and reaching patrons that this is theirs, not ours, in this small library in the middle of New England. And I think that we have a responsibility to give back, and through Wikipedia at least.
And in your case, since these course materials are very much aimed at English language Wikipedia, but there's, Wikipedia is in 278. I was thinking 30, but it's more than that. So many different languages, and being able to contribute back in different languages is also definitely one of the great advantages of Wikipedia. Although different communities have different cultural norms, different language communities have different cultural norms, so being mindful of that. Other things, when we were going through, I heard highlighting libraries' collections, maybe building bridges between community organizations, becoming part of the editing community,
Training peers.
training peers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Improving information about the community is kind of a big one because I work with a lot of local music content for different music collections for which I catalog. Just, even being able to put out information about, Lisa Belladonna or Counterfeit Madison or some of these really amazing artists that are coming out of the community.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll talk about notability because
Yeah.
that's something that would definitely come up with that. Like, you have local hotness, but
Yeah.
how do you
How do you translate
navigate
that? Yeah.
right? How do you navigate that in the wiki context is really important. Okay. So the five. Let's see how we're going. Taking up way too much time. So the 5 pillars of Wikipedia. So we're going to go through these one at a time. The first one, which I think gets glossed over a lot, is that Wikipedia is an encyclopedia, right? So what does that mean? I mean, I think that we all know what an encyclopedia is, but what is an encyclopedia? What are kind of the characteristics of an encyclopedia? What makes it different? Yeah, Karen.
Typically, these are short, authoritative entries on a topic or person.
Pretty much exactly it. One of the, I'm going to just, so go through this. Encyclopedia is a tertiary reference source, which is based on secondary sources. And when I worked in libraries, I worked in special collections. And it was hard for me to, it isn't hard for me to grok, but it took me a minute to grok that primary source material is not appropriate reference material for encyclopedia. And I think that that's for those of us who work with special collections or work around special collections, it's a really important thing to do, to understand. There are definitely rules for primary source materials in Wikimedia projects, but citing things from your primary source collections as a citation in Wikipedia is not one of those things. You need to rely on secondary source materials. So as a tertiary source relies on secondary sources, it doesn't rely on primary sources. The primary sources are incredibly important for books and stuff, books and articles and things that would be considered to be credible sources, but primary sources don't get cited in the encyclopedia. So, yeah,
Say a
please.
word about this, because I just got in an argument with a professor about this.
Oh, good.
Because content experts often get very wrinkled, like, well, this is my area of expertise, why can't I write what I know? The thing is, like, it's the encyclopedia everyone can edit, and we don't want people going on there and having novel interpretations of primary sources. Conspiracy theories are, this is my interpretation of this study about vaccines, or, things like that. And so, the experts need to publish, and we can use those as sources. And if you're in special collections, cite your own finding aids, but don't write original stuff on Wikipedia.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. That's it's not a place for original stuff. So we were talking about what's the role of experts on Wikipedia. And it's a dicey area because, as Rob says, they often get rankled, and then we'll write an editorial in the Washington Post. I think we've seen a lot of these. Like, I tried to edit Wikipedia once, and I put my original research in there, and it was rejected. And I think there's probably, 20 such outraged Washington Post editorials about, or something similar, about Wikipedia, and it's usually the same thing. It's an expert in the field who's tried to contribute, well-meaning, tried to contribute to Wikipedia, not understanding the rules and the ethos, and got caught up in that. So just because some people, I'm only highlighting this because it was something that caught me a little off guard. I know that I have friends who work in special collections who've been caught off guard by this, thinking, I want to contribute, and primary source materials is not the place for it. I hope you guys love Franz Kafka because we've got a lot of Franz Kafka examples. So we're gonna walk through an example here. So Franz Kafka is a feature article. So we're going to talk about kind of the different levels of article and the concept of peer review in Wikipedia. Who knew that there was peer review? Franz Kafka is an article that's gone through a community, the peer review process, as I mentioned, and that has the highest number of page views. So we're going to use this as an in-class example. Let's see. Right, and here, I think Monica has challenged people to compare the reference articles, if you have time later on, not right now. So it's an encyclopedic entry. It's a biographical summarization of secondary sources that are independent from the source itself, so you don't have Kafka's relatives writing their reminiscences of him. Those would be appropriate sources, I suppose, but maybe not the best sources that give an overview of the life, works, and critical reception and impact of this author. Okay. So it's the authority of the secondary sources that really matter to Wikipedia. So it's not only that they're secondary sources, but they're high quality secondary sources. And I think as librarians, we understand what good sources are, but we can really help in talking about information, in an information literacy context. You can help readers and other would-be contributors to Wikipedia understand what those critical sources are. So when you look at the numerous secondary sources for this feature article, you can see that there are books, journals, newspapers, and online sources, and that these are all very, generally very high quality sources. The reason that this is a feature article is because it has, one of the reasons that this is a feature article is it's well written, but it's also very well sourced. To your point, there's a lot of biases in our secondary sources, and we're talking a lot these days about decolonializing our libraries and our materials, and just how the publishing in general helps to replicate biases, and so it's just something to be aware of, is that we're working within a very flawed system. So a lot of things that are missing because of the nature of secondary sources. So Kafka's writings, the primary sources, where do those belong? Those would belong in the external links. They could be in a project like Wikisource. Images of those could be represented in Wikimedia Commons. They could be described in Wikidata. So there's a lot of room for working with primary source materials, just not strictly within article construction within Wikipedia. Okay. The second thing is that so Wikipedia, there's two different parts to it. It's a pedia, it's an encyclopedia, but it's also a wiki that can be edited. And one of the really cool features about Wikipedia is its extreme transparency. So you can see every history, the history of every version of the article. And if you click on, how many of you have gone through, have even noticed this View History tab and have clicked on it? And have you ever clicked just kind of randomly to see what the article looked like at a different period in time? Or even what the first version of an article was?
You can subscribe to them as RSS feeds, right?
I don't know.
Because I think I've done this in the past, just to get like the fire hose of like, this is what people think about Doctor Who right now. Just terrifying, don't do it.
Exactly that.
I did not know that. I have to say my RSS is a little rusty. I think when Google Reader went away, I just kind of went into mourning and migrated away from RSS altogether. But yeah, you can. I'm sure you can do that. There's various ways of visualizing Wikipedia edits. It's really it's incredible. We're going to come back to the history and how this is an important tool in evaluation later. But if you've never done that, it's really cool. I have just a brief story. There's a woman in the Bay Area. Her username is Dreamy Shade. And she's been editing Wikipedia since she was 16 years old because she heard about it somehow when the project very first started. And she wrote the first article on cello because there wasn't an article on cello, and she was playing the cello, and she's like, well, I could write an article on cello because I know about cellos. So she just opened up the page and wrote everything she knew about cello. So if you go to the article on cello and roll it back all the way to the very first entry, you'll see 16-year-old Dreamy Shade at the beginning of the project writing about cellos. I mean, it's fine. It's not like it's bad or anything, but I love that story. And I love that if I look at the article on cello, I can go back to the beginning and look at Dreamy Shade's very first edits. I thought I'd share that with you. So the Kafka article is a feature article, and this is old, but pretend it's new. It's proportionally, it's going to be about the same. So the number of feature articles compared to the number of articles in the encyclopedia overall is very tiny. So there's a lot, and even if you look at the kind of gradations of articles, there's a whole lot of things that are in this start category or unassessed articles. There's an incredible number of articles that haven't even been assessed. So pro tip, if you're looking for something to do, assess articles. Like, just assign them a quality rating. You don't need to be particularly, this isn't something that demands high skill or anything. You could just go through and assign quality ratings to articles. This is something you could do in your, I'm surprised it hasn't been gamified. Or maybe there is somebody.
Wiki projects to
Huh?
assess. I think you need to belong to a wiki project.
To assess articles.
No, but yeah,
It's
a great thing to do.
It's a thing to do. It's a thing to be done. But so you can see here that there's a great range in the quality. And there's Monica's quote: articles on Wikipedia are in a constant state of becoming. So we're going to go through now a neutral point of view, which is another really important thing about Wikipedia. So this is a wonderful example that Monica pulled out, and I think you pulled this out because this was a sentence that, if you look at the history of the article, this is a sentence that was like really very highly nuanced and talked about quite a bit before it arrived at this state of becoming. Because there, and I don't know if you want to talk about, if you remember even the particulars of this, but
yeah, you can look on the top page, and also if you go to the top page of this article, you can click to the discussion that took place as it was advanced from a good to a featured article. And there were two editors, I think there's a screenshot of their usernames later, who were working on this. Girta Aret and Pumpkin Sky are the editors. And they really discussed this a lot about which words to use. Should you use the word pejoratively? You know, how do you describe this? How is it described in the references? What's the authority of that, of the authors who did that? And so that history will give you a sense of how this idea of neutral point of view really was kind of a discourse process that led to it. In like the irony of ironies, I gave a kind of like a virtual high five to Girta Aret for her work on this article when I was looking at and researching the course materials. And just this morning, she sent me a wiki message. Oh, that's really nice.
Wow.
Yeah, so she's still at, or she, I'm using the word she, I don't know really who this person is. Their username is Goethe. Has contributed a lot of articles to like the history of literature, German literature, and it's so neat to see the social aspects of Wikipedia and get to know editors who contributed over time to this, and as they've struggled to kind of define what does neutral point of view mean, how do we achieve this, what are the pearls of this, but why is it beneficial for a reader to have this perspective?
Right, and it also gets back to that no ownership of the article, that a lot of this is really, your neutral may not be somebody else's neutral, so, you can't get your feelings hurt because somebody makes something more neutral than how you wrote it, or, so on and so forth. So I think neutrality is something that you arrive at. Speaking of which, Wikipedia editing open to all is collaborative, authorship is shared, so there should be no kind of like sitting on an article and protecting it from, the invasive contributions of others, although that happens. I mean, there are people who are unfortunately very, very protective of their articles, but this is one of the pillars, is that this is open to all. And it's also, on the other hand, free to share. It can be reproduced elsewhere on the internet, and is. There are things that are sold online that are reproductions of parts of Wikipedia articles, and that's fine. That's part of the ethos. You'll see those Wikipedia summaries in Google search terms. That's a topic of much contention in the Wikimedia community, but it's there to be used, and Google is leveraging it. So that's just what happens. This is a nice visualization of how Wikipedia editing is collaborative and authorship is shared. So probably much more to be. There's probably like a really nice interactive of this one.
There is it's a GIF, a GIF.
Yeah.
Contested statements.
So going back to our feature article, there are probably more editors that have contributed to this. So a lot, not only collaborative, but very collaborative, especially when you're getting into something like a feature article. That is something that really takes a village, although as Monica mentioned, these two articles kind of took it through the finish line. So really is a group process that I think everybody, even the people who made small edits, I think can take some pride in this article being advanced to the state. So how do you tell that something is a feature level article? This is, I was talking about, Wikipedia is desperately trying to send signals and maybe you're not noticing them. There's a little tiny star up in the corner that indicates that this is a feature level article. But you can also look on the talk page. So hopefully if people have looked at the edit history, they've also occasionally clicked over to the talk page and seen what's going on there or what's not going on there. A lot of times there's a lot of not going on there. But you can also kind of check out the assessment of the article. There's also some tools that you can set up in your user account to show what the assessment of the article is right in the article. So if you're logged in, you can see an assessment of the article. Or if it's not assessed, you can even use the which is a cool tool. I just installed that yesterday.
Nice.
My scripts. Rob helped me. Rob helps everybody.
I've got a question about that top comment.
Yeah.
That's totally new to me. It's been listed as a level 3 vital article in People. I'm not aware of level 3 vital article or People. What, do you know what?
I really don't. I mean, there's a...
There are like some core topics that you want like Wikipedia to cover well. I guess I don't know, maybe level 1 might be like Einstein, I don't know, but like the very, very most, I don't know, I'm not sure about that, but it's still a vital article that like if you want to go through them all, make sure you draw like each order at like very good.
it's basically just list making. It's like we're saying these are, if we're gonna create a new encyclopedia from scratch, these are the things we should have.
Right,
Mm.
right.
Yeah, as I said before, there's different wiki projects over time. Some of them are active, some of them are not, like Wiki Project Seattle, for example, that's where I'm from. And so editors who are interested in that topic have come together and identified what's most important for that project to identify, and those are contested. So something that, you know, Wiki Project African American History is gonna have a certain set of topics or articles, and so there may be one article that's a member of 3 different wiki projects, and they've been evaluated differently. It's a top priority in one, but it's, you know, third in another. And that just means that editors are able to flag to each other that they want to work on those to improve them. So in that assessment rubric that you saw, there was like the listing of different levels of assessment, and then there was a listing of its different levels of importance.
Yeah, and I skipped over that.
Yeah, and it's like kind of a messy graphic to read, but once you kind of understand what that's saying, it's basically giving people work lists on things to work on. You could also evaluate by number of page views. So there's a listing of articles somewhere else that you could look at and be like, these have the highest number of page views every day, but they're also the either unassessed, stub, or underdeveloped. And so that might be your work list because people are looking at them, then you want to work on them.
Yeah, so, and you can see those projects here. So Kafka is a popular guy. He's been claimed by many different projects, Wiki Project Austria, Biography, Arts and Entertainment, Czech Republic. So, and you can see, you know, what Monica was saying, that here it's, he's considered to be mid-level importance for Wiki Project Austria, but high importance for Czech Republic. So, you know, but these are all human judgments. I mean, ultimately, a person or a group of people have arrived at this. This doesn't mean that, you know, Kafka's less important in the Czech Republic than he is. This isn't like some kind of objective, you know, it's the assessment. And some of these projects are very active, and some of them are just like ghost towns.
These
So
assessments are not set in stone.
No.
They're just some person came along and made a decision.
Yeah.
And maybe they're wrong.
Yeah.
Look at it as a starting point for helping you understand.
Wikipedians are relentless list makers and list checker offers. And these assessment ratings really factor into how the project may want to prioritize working on various articles, because it takes a lot of work to get something to a feature level article. So as a community, you want to focus effort on the things that you think are going to have highest return for your project. So this is getting into some really good kind of community stuff behind the scenes with Wikipedia. So again, anything, you know, anyone can edit, but does everyone edit? And so it's not only a question of are the sources biased, but who is editing Wikipedia, and what biases did they bring with them, and what's their worldview? So what we know about Wikipedia editors is, not surprisingly, mostly white, educated men from northern hemispheres, which does not represent diversity. This is English language Wikipedia, or Wikipedia
This is
overall?
English language Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Everything in this is about English language Wikipedia.
Yeah. So, you know, so buyer beware. Okay. The fourth pillar of Wikipedia, which is a pillar not always upheld, is that we'll be respectful and civil to one another. Again, these are humans on the web. Your mileage may vary. I think that you do see, I would say more often than not, there is civility on Wikipedia. The ugly parts of Wikipedia are pretty ugly, but people are generally very civil and even quite loving with one another. And one of the really lovely things that people do is award one another Barn stars or leave really nice notes on their talk pages. I don't know how many of you have gotten a nice note on your talk page in the past for having participated in an editathon or run an editathon. You probably have given Barn stars for people coming to some of your.
You know, I haven't, but I've actually received really nice comments, like when I've been looking at other language Wikipedias. Like I have gotten the, you know, which is actually kind of nice. If, you know, I'll get, even if I haven't even made any edits, I got one in Thai the other day. Don't ask me why I was looking at Thai Wikipedia, because I can't read Thai, but it was, I'm assuming it was, you know, it was, I think the message to me was in English, but it was like, oh, or part of it, or most of it was in Thai. I couldn't look at it, but that kind of thing which is kind of nice, right? Because I didn't even,
it was shocking to me when it first happened. But then I was like, oh.
Yeah, it was probably a bot that did
It was
that.
probably a bot, but it was still kind of like, but it was like, I think that's like the other thing is like sometimes the bot human interaction in Wikipedia, I kind of actually enjoy, like, because somebody actually like went to the effort to program a bot to like encourage people who have made edits to continue doing it.
Yeah.
So even though there wasn't like an actual person like handwriting me a note, that somebody actually went to the effort to program a bot to send everybody who starts editing notes, exhortatory notes, which is kind of delightful.
Right. So on your, you are, when you create a user account, you're part of Wiki, and your talk page is also part of the Wiki, and you can use that and leverage that and enjoy it. People will, I've had people leave me little cups of coffee or kittens or barn stars or whatnot, or just little nice little notes like, thank you for commenting on this, if I've engaged in a talk page. So I think that adding that kindness back into Wikipedia is something that's really important, something that we can all do and enjoy when it happens. So the fifth pillar of Wikipedia is the one that I find both the most exciting and the most challenging as a librarian and a Virgo. I really like rules, but I also really appreciate being in an environment where you really are encouraged to think outside the box. And to think about new ways of doing things and not feel too duty bound. Although, as our administrator says, it's helpful to have rules, and it's important to have rules. It's also sometimes good to not feel too bound by those rules, or to the thing that's not part of the 5 pillars is this concept of being bold. And I just have to say to myself, be bold, darling, be bold. What would a Wikipedian do? Be bold. So those are the 5 pillars of Wikipedia. Are there any of these that are, like, I'm assuming, this is a wizened crowd. You guys have been around the block except for Eric and maybe a couple of others. But are there any of these that are, like, surprising to you or that you hadn't really thought of before?
Well, there's ones like, I don't know, sometimes there's ones that contradict each other, like, there is no deadline, like, you can work on things, like, whatever, and however long, but then there's kind of like, there is a deadline, because, like, I don't know, even sometimes, like, if it's like a library, or, I don't know, sometimes, like, things get destroyed, and it's like, there's a deadline, or, I don't know, some urgencies, and make sure everything gets documented, or digitized, and all that, so, or like there are no rules, there are rules, or I don't know, but it's like I don't know, like nothing's set in stone, but it's like I don't know.
Yeah.
I think this is a thing that applies to a lot of library work, though, is that, we do like rules. We like having rules. But I think we also like knowing how and when and why to break them.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of an important thought process that builds into this. It also has a lot to do with the difference between deadlines and urgency.
Yeah.
Right?
It's important to remember what Wikipedia is about, like what the purpose is, and like in some particular case, the rules in the way of like the purpose, and like no one's gonna like argue or whatever. Then it's just like do what you think is like best. Just do it. Like it's just in the cases where like people disagree and there's controversy that like it's more important to have rules like to help govern that. But like block like because there's a rule like.
Okay. That's what we had a chat break, a brief chat break. It's 11:30. We're scheduled to go for another hour. Do people need a bio break? Good. I need one. I've finished one bottle of water, so I'm gonna maybe like 5 minutes to stretch our legs and get up and get about, and then we'll dive back into it. Article assessment. No. Oh, no. Never.
Oh, always.
Well, I can't help it.
That's the best excuse.
It's a really good excuse for a lot of things. So we have one resident who's moving out tomorrow, and then another one who wants to start moving in on Sunday. And so one of my like core values is feeding them as often as possible.
That is a very humane core value.
Yes. Our whole premise around is going out to give it away.
That's awesome.
I knit it. I both my kids actually love wearing dress outfits. All they want to do either. Wait, can I get first?
We actually have to run off.
Yeah.
Are you coming to their session?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I was yeah. I went to espresso with my partner and we've got
I need to like make yeah, I'm just gonna hand you that.
Thank you. You're excellent.
I didn't want,
Yeah, I have like an abundance of this as always, but I also have
yeah, you can actually
so I just reached
I have a very thick
you
pencil.
know,
That's my college
dresses, and so uniform
I've got a full digital.
Oh, whoa.
Just about,
I feel like
you know, early childhood development and gender identity.
like that's really tempting because it's very convenient.
Just
Crosswords are
assuming
one of
that
those
she
things
was
where
like,
like I'm just like stuck on the sort of nostalgia of like the physical paper, even though most of the time it's just a printout. Like it's, but also like, I'm very good at crossword puzzles, and like my best
Yeah,
friend is really
I'm gonna assume it's okay, but I'm also gonna ask you your expertise. Yes, acknowledge your expertise.
They fetishize. They fetishize.
Yeah, like we want to be the best.
They're clipboard and like mechanical pencil fetishes. So like I feel like very enmeshed in that, and yeah.
Yes, and he's so like who wouldn't want to wear that? He also wants to be Elsa, so because you can change the mother. I mean, why not?
Really jealous.
She has like the strangest magical powers.
When dudes finally put on leggings, they're like, this is so comfortable. How did you wear anything?
I was like, you didn't want to assume that. It was your little.
Yeah. He's like, I feel like the show is the and a lot of the work is like charcoal and like red oil paints and he's so really sweet. So I'm getting up at Sam. He wants it really open and lacy and stretchy. So yeah, no,
I know. It's really good. I like Frozen because it's like, it is really a friend and sister love. It's not about romantic love. That saves.
No one ever does that.
But yeah,
I have really sure and so when I saw how thick the notes are, I was like, wait a second, is that what I'm I'm going to email you both. Yeah. All right.
But it's still dizzy. I don't know. It's okay. They don't want to office. Yeah. It's hard to escape, or it's hard to resist it. So I'm like, well, let's go in. My ears are like I think I might go and get copies of I mean, if there's a lot of messages, there was not
Like sometimes you can like time these things like whatever.
They might be like
Yeah, which is fine. Yeah, I figure if it comes sometime.
Nice to see you, Terry. Nice to see you. By the way, high five is really so well.
Yeah.
And I think you asked me a question that I never answered.
Are you taking off as well?
No, I'm gonna let my car.
It was something that was like out of things.
Yeah.
I worked with you about 4 years ago.
I'm gonna connect you with Alex. I'm gonna run to the bathroom. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, okay. I was looking at you and I was thinking you look so familiar. And where are you now?
Denison.
Okay, that's why. I know, I was thinking you looked really familiar and I was thinking, oh, Denison, I don't really know anybody from Denison. Okay, thank you. I know, I'm so glad that you reminded me because I've seriously been looking at you and thinking. But I get that all I'm sure people were sure that they've met me before,
Oh,
and they'd
really?
be very insistent about that.
Well, you travel around so much, so you've probably seen, like, I bet everybody would be like, I think I know that person, I think I know that person.
I'm gonna take a bio break. So
Yeah.
this is so great. It's so fun to see you do this.
Oh, gosh.
Thank you.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna end around 12:30. Is that right?
Yeah.
I have to go
That's
back
what they
to
told
work.
me. Huh?
I have to go back to work. My boss wants to know when I'll be there.
Are you gonna be at the conference this weekend?
I run an artist residency with my partner, and we've got a resident moving out tomorrow and another one moving in on Sunday.
Okay. So I'll just tell you, we have, so there's a Wikipedia and Libraries Facebook group.
Okay.
That you can join. There's also a Wikipedia and Libraries Wikimedia and Libraries user group.
Excellent.
That you can join, so if you can find that on Wiki, you can join that. And then there's also a mailing list.
Okay, hold that thought, because I need to throw this in here. I'm telling my boss when I'll be there, so what,
And
there was
also,
a
if
Facebook,
you
what was the
give me
Facebook
your
group?
card, I can email you too.
I don't actually have
So
my
there's a
card.
Facebook group, it's called like Wikipedia plus Libraries, I think.
Like a literal plus sign?
I think so.
Okay. So there's a Wikipedia plus library.
There is so if you look up Wikimedia Libraries listserv,
Oh, yeah,
you will
okay.
find there is it's called there's a libraries listserv that's getting to be pretty active, actually. So librarians love their emails.
So,
This is getting great.
You're just trying to get me started on AutoCAD.
You can put things on Twitter and they can just get lost.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
Facebook group is really pretty lively and active.
It's a user
And then
group?
there's a user group. There's it's called Wikimedia and Libraries user group. So that's on Wiki.
Okay. Wikimedia and libraries. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, so those are some good, ways to meet some more Wikibarians.
That's right, and have paper. See, I have this paper problem. Can I have a sheet of paper, because I am so bad about this. I lose paper immediately. And so I had this New Year's resolution a couple years ago where it's like nothing in my life is going to happen on paper anymore, just because I know better I've met me.
Yeah.
I have devices, I have clouds.
So, at some stage.
Yeah. I'm gonna write my stuff down for you so you can email me.
I love the name Misty so much that I named my hamster Misty.
Would you like to hear the horribly inappropriate story of my name? It's horribly inappropriate where my name came from. My name is Misty Dawn. I was almost Heather Moonbeam, because my mom's a hippie. My dad wanted to name me Heather Dawn after Heather Down's golf course in Toledo. And my mom was in between contractions, doped up on whatever they did in the 70s, and she was watching soap operas, which she never, ever, ever did. And there was a prostitute named Misty Dawn on one of them. And in her doped up state, she was like, I love you. And so, yeah, and she used to tell me when I was a kid, was named after a prostitute.
It's okay. I'm named after one of my dad's ex-girlfriends, and he never told my mom that.
That's fantastic.
Oh, really?
And I'm like, thanks, Dad. But you can't tell your mom.
Yeah.
Clearly.
It's a really pretty.
That's fantastic. I'm just so glad I
I
skipped
like,
being a
I mean,
Heather.
I like her name, but it's just kind of like, what? I'd rather not know that.
I'm, again, just glad I'm not a Heather. I was a biscuit away from being a Heather.
Oh, you're about the age of my daughter. Right? That was one
Is
of
she a Heather? Yeah.
She could have been.
She could have been, we all could have been
She could have
Heathers. We all could have been Heathers.
Will you be touching at all on the Wikidata aspect of this?
I will not be talking about it.
I was just wondering just how much of this gets reflected in Wikidata, in particular
You know,
the
it's a-
feature article.
It's a
type
good, it's a
information.
good question, because the, you know, the communities are very different, so.
They really are. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've worked with both a good bit,
Yeah.
more actually with
Yeah,
Wikidata.
but I don't know that there's kind of that concept of like a high quality wiki data item.
There should be. I mean,
Right.
But you can't do it on an individual claim basis.
Right.
Very well, you can to some degree, but as far as the Wikidata entry for as a whole for an entity,
Right.
it's really hard to.
Right.
You know, you really can't say that at any moment in time because it'll change
Right.
a day later.
Right.
So this is our.
So maybe since our time together is limited, I'll go ahead and get started with, I know we lost some people who had to go off to a meeting. Others have been carried away by beautiful Columbus. But we'll go ahead and talk about editing and then different features of the editing process. Sammy, can I interrupt? Yeah, sorry. So I have a bunch of like favorite quotes, you know, things that people have said. So Phoebe Ayers, who's a very active Wikipedian and a librarian, she's actually been on the Wikipedia Board of Directors or whatever it's called.
Trustees, I think they're called,
Yeah,
yeah.
Board of Trustees. But she's a science and engineering librarian. She's at MIT now, so she's like gone and died and gone to heaven. She's in a perfect place to be a science and engineering librarian. She told me once that you can think of Wikipedia like a virtual newsroom or like walking into a busy editorial room. And what you see on Wikipedia, you know, there's no kind of, you can put things into draft spaces, but really what you see in Wikipedia is just a work in progress. So it's not like you're seeing the morning edition of the paper, you know, delivered to your doorstep. You're seeing everything that's kind of in process, and all of the behind the scenes things that are in a newsroom too are visible on Wikipedia if you know where to look. So it's a very busy place. There's over 300 edits per minute, or about 300 edits per minute. This is on English language Wikipedia, so you know it's a busy place. If you can go to that edit button, I'm just going to kind of gloss over this. We're going to talk, once again, return to this rubric. And again, so there's the different quality ratings, but also the importance, how things are assessed by importance by the various projects. So a lot of unassessed articles, and then the feature articles. And we're gonna, so if you look down here, like, you know, reliable sources are needed, and we need more help and input. There's a lot of editors on Wikipedia, not a tremendous number of active editors. Do you happen to remember how many active editors there are on Wikipedia? It's like in the hundreds of thousands, right?
Well, it depends on how you measure active
Yeah.
editors.
Right. But somewhere in that sort of ballpark.
I remember there's a new designation called extended confirmed that was invented by ARPCOM, which pretty much designates the limiting line between where you're considered, you know, suspicious because you're too new,
right,
and when you have 500 edits or 30 days, I think, and
Yeah.
that is not as huge a number as you would expect.
No, so
Not
there's
that-
a lot of
It's in
registered
the thousands.
editors.
It's in the several thousands, but it's not in the 100,000s.
Okay. I think maybe I'm thinking of like editors who made edits in the last 30 days.
Yeah.
Or something, maybe a higher number, but people who stick around in the project. So two of the things that we want to talk about are notability and conflict of interest. And Eric, I know you had an interest in conflict of interest. So, and then Notability, I think, is also something, so you were talking about your music collections for your local musicians. And I think that these are two perfect, this is a perfect example, right? And I think when you talk about like an article about your library, that's something where both notability and conflict of interest kind of come into play. And I run into a lot of librarians who say, I think my library should have an article on Wikipedia. And that's both notability and conflict. So that's kind of an interesting area. So the first thing is this topic notable? Is this worthy of having an encyclopedia article? And I think probably many of you saw there was the woman who won the Nobel Prize for physics.
Yeah. She's
And-
just down, like, literally 45 minutes from me.
Really? Right, so that's a perfect example of, there was an article on her that was proposed and then declined
Declined,
because she
yeah.
wasn't
Notable.
notable enough. And now she's notable enough,
Oh.
and the fact that
Yep.
The Nobel Prize.
she wasn't already in Wikipedia is like, it's one of those New York Times moments
Yeah.
where, Wikipedia is falling down. So, is this worthy of being included, is a topic worthy of being included in an encyclopedia article? That's the kind of notability. By the way, there's these Wikipedia shortcuts. There's a whole bunch of them, and I never remember them. I always use the Wikipedia search bar like a Google tool and search for them, or I just search in Google Wikipedia notability. But there are all of these shortcuts that if you put into the Wikipedia search bar, if you put WP : and then the remainder of the shortcut. So in this case it's GNG, which stands for General Notability Guidelines.
General
I think-
Notability Guidelines.
Yeah.
And you'll also see if you ever look at discussions about notability or other topics, people use these
People will
shortcuts
shorthand.
as a shorthand for referencing a set of policies or guidelines in supporting their opinion. So it's kind of like Wikipedia-ese. If you read it and you don't know what that means, it would be really confusing. So it's kind of like, shorthand that's been developed.
Yeah, and so these can be like just knowing, and there's a ton of them. There are a ton of them. So we went through the 5 pillars, that is like just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many of them. But notability is a really, really important one to dig on. And, so here the sources are really important because the sources will help to demonstrate that a topic is notable or not. So if you've got your local music collections, to be able to demonstrate that your local musicians are notable, finding some coverage that's beyond, the general, kind of like the local, if they're covered in a local paper, that's great. They're covered in a paper, that's a start.
But if they're
they
covered
were
nationally or
Right, if
internationally.
they were covered nationally, if like there was a review of their articles in Rolling Stone or something, or one of their records in Rolling Stone or something like that, that would be great. Or, if they had a television appearance someplace even. that
Or if
would
they
be-
had, what if they have sort of local coverage in a lot of different geographically distinct areas?
That adds up to it, but if you can only demonstrate that you only have things in the Columbus Dispatch, that's gonna probably be a no. Depending, it depends, because people have various attitudes. People are inclusionists and people are deletionists. So there are people who are just like, they feel it's their job to keep the number of articles down, or they're on guard, honestly, quite on guard against vandalism. Because a lot of musicians, I actually have a musician friend who contacted me and said, hey, I hear you work on Wikipedia, can you help me get an article? Because I am trying to get, he's trying to get on like some part of YouTube. And in order to do that, he needs to have a Music Brains entry and he needs to have a Wikipedia article. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, so I tell him, I know you, I can't create, this gets a conflict of interest, I can't create an article for you, but who's asking you to do this? And it's like YouTube is asking, Google is asking him to.
That is fascinating.
Right,
I
so,
knew that.
right,
Yeah.
so I
Circularity.
I actually wanna get a copy of their policy.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of part of the problem, because if they're telling all of their musicians, you need to get a Wikipedia article, this is the
Get a
barrier you need
Wikipedia,
to
that's
jump.
right.
I
That,
thought anyone could post a video to YouTube, not the case?
Yeah, but it's a.
No, it's a different.
It's a group within.
it's a group
Oh.
Yeah.
within YouTube that's for music distribution. So it's not
Oh.
just putting it's having your music distributed through YouTube.
YouTube.
Ah.
Yeah.
So as a musician, he's trying to do this. And so he needs those two things, a music brains entry and a Wikipedia entry, otherwise they will not talk to him.
Wikipedia, one of the guidelines is if you've been charted by any of the record charts, and you're probably not gonna get
So
charted if you're not
unless
getting
you're-
distributed.
Yeah,
Right,
that
right,
becomes
so-
this.
Right, so I said, this is kind of a chicken and egg problem,
Yeah.
because we no longer have music I mean, this is getting into a huge tangent, but
Right.
we no longer have music distribution channels that, you know, are like they used to be.
Yeah.
Like when I was growing up, I went to Tower Records and bought my records. So, yeah, so it's an interesting conundrum, and I would really like a copy of this policy, because I'd like to be able to talk to people at Google to say, like, this is a little bit of an issue for us guys, because what they're doing is creating an ecosystem
Mhm.
where people like him are gonna pay somebody to create an article on him, which is like not what we want. But anyhow, we digress. Is he notable? I don't think so, but, you know, he's trying to make a living. I don't know. Okay, so, so here's an article that's on a notable topic, library, we can agree, this is notable, there's pictures of beautiful libraries, probably should be a picture, you guys check this library out, it's awesome. But, so, does every library deserve, you know, and this is something that we did as an exercise in the class, is there's, you know, the Roosevelt Public Library, and I don't, or is this Roosevelt, California, or
I don't even
Roosevelt?
remember.
Yeah,
I don't
but,
even remember this
but, you know, we're
library.
gonna fast forward over this because we don't have, time to do this homework, but talking about what it would take for this particular library, or, you know, your library, to have, an encyclopedia entry. And again, this is something that's variable. Another thing, pro tip, there is guidance on notability of organizations, libraries or organizations, so you can go and read about what would help organization. There's guidelines for there's guidelines for living persons. There's different distinct guidelines for living persons versus dead persons. Again, because people are trying to game the system. Yeah, so notability is based on the existence of suitable sources, not on the stated sourcing of an article. And it can be really hard as a domain expert. You may know just deep in your heart that this person or this organization is really important to your profession, you know, is nationally important, but demonstrating that in secondary source material can be really hard. And I've had this experience with library organizations. A lot of the history of library organizations is really buried in the professional literature, which is difficult to access. Even for librarians, it's difficult to access. You need to know who collects that particular literature, be able to find it, track it down. It's not all online. So demonstrating notability, particularly if you're developing a new article, this can be, or if you're trying to buttress and assist somebody who's trying to develop a new article, notability can be an issue. And this article, which you pulled out a year ago, Monica is still in the same state.
Yeah, I might have improved it a little bit, but not.
I think I saw that you had edited it a little bit, but, so this is an article that is on a notable topic. But isn't that notability is not demonstrated in the sources.
Yeah, and it's also an example of some of Wikipedia's biases. So the article on Merry Christmas and other holiday greetings in other religions are more developed than this one. And this is here, I pulled this from that site I told you. This is a list of popular topics that get a lot of page hits. So even Barack pulls up high on like searches, but it needs expansion.
Okay, so conflict of interest. So WP.
That's neutral point of view.
Neutral point of view.
Yeah.
Right, so conflict of interest, there's a ton of things about conflict of interest. So there's, so let's see, this isn't really getting at conflict of interest, but this is getting at kind of the tone of the article. So the very, very first thing that I wrote on Wikipedia, full disclosure, was a complete conflict. I had no idea what I was doing. So I was working on a project, not at OCLC, and I basically copied and pasted the project page into the text from the project page into Wikipedia. And that was wrong on so many different levels. It was a conflict of interest, it was a copyright violation, which I didn't get nailed on. And it was written like a web page, right? Like, so it was all full of like, this is the greatest, the best, the blah, blah, blah. And it was long enough ago that some nice person took my article, and which did have citations, by the way, so I will say that in my favor, not just to the website, but they took it and they reduced it down from like, maybe 4 paragraphs down to about like, 2 paragraphs with 10 sentences or something like that. And a lot of that was, really getting rid of the promotional language, getting rid of the peacock language, getting rid of the, what are you going to say?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say the reason that I put this here is because Wikipedia editors don't know who you are, so they might assume you have a conflict of interest if you use promotional language. And I wrote an article about a first woman chief in a Coast Salish tribe. And for whatever reason, I don't know this woman and I'm not associated with that tribe. It was at an art and feminism editing event, and I was like, oh, she seems like a notable person. There was a lot of sources, but I used the word, I used some peacock language, like she's the greatest, or like most, has done so many, blah, blah, blah things, visionary. I think she has a visionary, and those signaled to other editors that I am giving kind of undue promotion, and so I was flagged as having a conflict of interest for her. And this is because I think we're in a very commercial internet, so a lot of times people assume that like you're going in and you're adding that in order to promote that. And so that's where that kind of connection lies. But the idea is also for Wikipedians is to comment on the content, not make assumptions about who the contributor is, but sometimes people are very wary of the fact that many contributors come in purposefully just to improve particular articles, so it gets really confusing.
Yeah, and that gets back to my comment at the very beginning. Ask yourself why you're here and what you're trying to do, and is what you're trying to do in line with the project. So I think that those can be good if you're in that kind of area where you feel like, I'm not sure if this is a conflict of interest or not, just ask yourself some of those questions. So the greatest bird ever, the most important chief
the most important
chief
in the history.
Right, the most important. I mean, unless you've got some serious sources to back that up.
Unless that's according to so-and-so.
Right, like if you're the best shot put person, that's demonstrable. You can show world records of their time, or something like that. But
If I may really quickly, I was just always been baffled as a Wikipedian, like, why would people write like this? Because you don't go to the Encyclopedia Britannica and say like, this is the greatest thing ever, or my library has 120,000 books as of last year. It's like, and I just don't get it. Like people forget it just because it's on the web. It's also encyclopedia, and your content should be like you would expect from those other.
Yeah,
I think
that because it is on the web, it's because a lot of us also write things for like it is going to go to the donors or it's going to go on our webpage, and there you do want to be the best.
Yes.
You have to demonstrate value.
You have to demonstrate value, and I think that we're all under pressure to demonstrate value. So especially if we're taking language from someplace else.
I think we've become so used to using that kind of language as well that it's hard to take the time and realize that you should not be using that.
Writing for an encyclopedia is a skill that most of us don't have in day to day. So I think that kind of recognizing that you need to put on a different hat and write in a different way. And this is also a place where if you see that language in other articles, edit it, please. Just go ahead and.
I do that on WorldCat all the time.
I think it's a little bit like the same way as writing a journal or a thesis is a different writing style from something else. Writing for Wikipedia is a different writing style itself.
So here, we've talked about this. This was the vegan cheese The image of the vegan cheese, so, conflict of
Just
interest.
highlighting interesting things in Wikimedia comments.
Yeah, that's right. So conflict of interest, I don't think we returned to this, but Eric, you were saying that you feel like topics that you'd like to edit, you feel like you have a conflict of interest with. And I think that all of us have biases, and all of us, I mean, you can take the idea of conflict of interest very, very far. You can take it to be like, I live in this town, I shouldn't edit things that relate to the town. Probably not unless you're like on city council, maybe, I don't know.
I think we all have biases, and we all have interests, and those aren't conflicts of interest. A conflict of interest is if you're being paid or your livelihood depends on that, or if you have a very close family or friend who you'd be giving kind of undue promotion to. But interests are not conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
So I wonder if getting involved with one of the wiki projects kind of in that area would help kind of support some of that stuff, or if I'm just on my own.
I think if you feel like you have a conflict of interest, that buddying up with another person can be very useful. So I will disclose that I have edited the OCLC article. The OCLC article needs your help. So if you do not have a conflict of interest, I wish you would go and improve it because it is in desperate shape. But there was, it had an actual error that was introducing a lot of difficulty for me in the Wikipedia community because there was a statement that there was this whole issue with the library hotel, and OCLC was in a lawsuit with the library hotel, and it was over trademark violation. But in the article, it said it was a copyright suit. So I was running into Wikipedians who were telling me, I can't use data from WorldCat because you were going to sue us for copyright. It says so right in your article. So I wrote on the talk page and said, I have a conflict of interest. This is wrong. I would like to edit it. And a month went by, nobody said anything. I wrote on the talk page, I said, I'm going to edit this. And a Dutch librarian said, I am going to keep an eye on you. And that was great. So, you know, and then he actually made some more edits to the article, which made it even better. You know, so, but that's the way, and I had also been editing Wikipedia at that point for many, many years. And I saw that as an area where I had to step in. Nobody was fixing it. It was wrong. It was blatantly wrong. I was able to back it up with sources. It was just a, you know, mistaken interpretation of what the suit was about. I don't think anybody did it maliciously or anything, but it was definitely causing us
Sounds like a good ignore all rules.
Right, be bold, right?
But
So,
move to me.
but I did it with a great deal of transparency and also with support from another community member who, you know, acknowledged that, you know, that I was going into some kind of dicey territory. And it's not like I'm encouraging all of you to do that, but I would encourage you to think of yourselves as, you know, you are able to be, because you have a conflict of interest doesn't mean that you can't make the article better. It's not where I would encourage you to start, is with an article on something that you feel, Eric, is, you know, a new article.
My obvious example is the Virtual International Authority file. I've been involved in the project since it began.
Yeah.
There's not necessarily a lot of secondary information about it. But I could probably improve the article significantly.
Yes, you could.
But,
And
you know,
you could.
I mean, OCLC pays my, you know, bills, and it's an OCLC service.
But you're also a subject matter expert. So what you can do is you can write on the top page, I'm a subject matter expert on this, that I'm disclosing my institutional affiliation. And then you can also put a conflict of interest statement on your user page, which may be covered in this deck, I'm not sure.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. Yeah, but that's something that we encouraged in the course and in the curriculum materials, if you are to adapt them yourself or look through them, to just state out, like, this is who I am, this is, you know, these are my interests, but this is also my institutional affiliation, and so if you see any problem, you know, please reach out to me, like, let's have a conversation. I am, you know, working in the spirit of improving the encyclopedia and making sure that people have accurate, authoritative information on topics that I'm knowledgeable about. And I mean, if you're open and transparent about that, I think there's a lot of room for improvement for subject matter experts.
Yeah, and the other thing you can do, Eric, is you can put it onto the talk page. You can say, these are, so this is what I did. I said, these are the parts of the article that I think need improving. Here are the sources that back it up. And if nobody else is interested in taking this on, I'm going to do it. I mean, you can look at the OCLC page and look at the talk page and see what I did and try to model it on that. You can also look at my user page. I have a conflict of interest statement there, and I stole that from somebody at the Smithsonian. You're happy to, you know, just take it, copy it, paste it, put it on your own user page. But
And if that's still a little bit too much for you, can you just rewrite it? The parts that you want to rewrite, you can rewrite them on the talk page and
Yes.
you can rewrite there.
Yeah, let somebody else. do it.
Let people, other people look at it. If no one has done anything with it, with
Yeah,
it in a
then-
year,
then
come
go
back in a
for
year
it.
and just put it in the article. But if you leave it in the talk page, it's a little bit more, creates a little bit more distance.
yeah.
And gives it a little bit more time
And
to
it gives
mature.
complete transparency
Yeah.
to what you're doing. And I think that what you want to get away from is the appearance or the fact that you are kind of sneaking around and doing this.
Right, yeah.
But,
Or even worse, actively manipulating.
right, right. But if you're, I mean, that's the reason that these are in places, because people are honestly trying to game the system. Wikipedia, because it is such a valuable internet commodity, people are constantly trying to, you know, game the system. And they're very clever about it. And sometimes, most of the time, maybe not so clever. I don't know, you probably see a lot of this kind of stuff, but.
You know, there's a common pattern when you see someone's only edited one article.
Right.
And it's an
Yeah.
article about a biography or a company, and it's the only thing they ever edit.
Right, right. But I think a lot of people, I mean, you know, in those people's defense, I meet a lot of people who, you know, they're really passionate about their library, they want to create an article about their library. And I think if they weren't given some encouragement, that's all that they would do. So, you know, is it necessarily a bad thing that people want to contribute to the one thing that they know a lot about? I think there are people who are like, they're just there for one job, and that job is like, you know, just about the hits. But they're, I
People
don't
have a myopic view of like what they know about. Like they know about their community.
That's right.
They know about their favorite sports team. There's all kinds of things.
That's right.
So they need to get out of that box. Like I only
Right.
want to write about my library.
Yeah, yeah, and I also challenge people, like, if you really, your library is the only thing you can write about, I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a single minute. Okay, anyhow, we are gonna, before we finish up, we're gonna get into these core content policies and how this goes into article assessment. So we've got neutral point of view, no original research, which we talked about earlier with the primary sources, and verifiability, which we're gonna jump into. And also, I think I made reference to this a little earlier, but there are specific policies for the biographies of living persons. So if you're working on an article on a living person, or if you're helping to develop a new article on a living person in particular, those are worth taking a look at, as are the guidelines for articles on organizations. Here is, we've got Michelle Obama. So biographies of living persons are often given extra attention on Wikipedia because
Real world impact.
And you could either go into, you know, peacock language or slander or,
Right,
yeah.
right. People want to influence a conversation, right? Or people are trying to get, you know, like my friend, the musician,
Yeah.
is trying to get featured on Wikipedia because it's going to help him get a record deal with YouTube.
And there are real live people who may be impacted by having a Wikipedia article about them in bad or good ways, so.
Yeah.
Tread
Yeah.
carefully.
Especially also with children, for instance. You want to be careful with like famous people. You don't want to disclose where famous their children go to school, those kinds of things, because that might create real impact upon those children. They have no line of defense.
Right.
So those are all like kind of extra things to be careful about.
Yeah, don't assume everybody wants exposure.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just because the information is verifiable and online doesn't mean that it should be included in the.
Some people don't want their birthday
Right.
in an article, and generally if they ask for it, we don't do that.
Yeah. Although some people are insistent about it.
Yes. Well, and there's also like lefts like Michelle Obama. She's so well known that
Right.
even if she would ask us to hide her birthday. We wouldn't because everybody knows it, so.
She's a public figure.
Yeah, she's
Too
a public
late.
figure. She's
It's
so
too late
high.
for her.
Yeah.
Okay, so our Franz Kafka, this is, as we've discussed, it's a feature article. We love Franz Kafka. A quality article has a clear and easy to understand lead section, a clear structure, balanced coverage that is neutral, written without bias, without those peacock words, and is supported by reliable sources throughout the article. But a lot of times you find articles that maybe they have some of this, but they don't have all of it. So how are some ways that you can analyze the article? So we had an exercise where we had people kind of walk through assessing 3 articles, and we're gonna kind of step through some of these things. So the first thing is a assessment class. So you remember we went through this by now familiar, somewhat perplexing grid. So we're gonna step now through some of these things. So there's good articles. I mean, a lot of these are perfectly good articles. Like some things may get to C class, and that's all that they really need or deserve, and they're going to be perfectly good articles. But anyhow, this is kind of stepping through all of the different things, and then the unassessed articles, which can be the most tricky because Wikipedia is not giving you any signals. So how can you help to do with these? One of our Wikibrarians, Janos McGee, who's got one of the most incongruous and delightful names, and his Wikipedia username is MacGyver. MacGyver, yeah. So he was he's a reference librarian at the St. Paul Public Library, and really has incorporated Wikipedia into his practices. I'd say that the webinar that he did was one of my favorites, one of my absolute favorites, because he really had some great things about how he connects Wikipedia to his reference work. So, and he also contributes, he edits quite a bit. One of the things you can do is if you follow these steps, you can activate, there's a gadget that will make the quality assessment of every article show up on your page. So if you're in Wikipedia, if you're logged in, you can follow these steps and just enable the gadgets. So under the preferences, when you're logged into your user account at the top, you can find gadgets. There's all kinds of really cool gadgets, but this is one of my favorites because it puts the assessment right on the article. And then once you've enabled this, it'll show you that this article is an unassessed article. So then once you know that you need to dig a little bit deeper to be able to, for yourself, assess how reliable this article might be. Okay, so the second thing that you can do is you can look for templates. And what are templates? They're staring you right in the face. You probably see these all the time on Wikipedia. There's these are, again, kind of like desperate pleas for help, or Wikipedia is signaling to you that there's something really important. And these could be either at the top of the article or sometimes they're in sections. So sometimes the article is fine, but there's a particular section that has some problems with it. There's a lot of different templates. You can remove these if you don't feel like if you look at the article and you think that this has definitely happened to me, where it said this article or this section needs additional citations for verification, and then I look at the date on it. So here it's marked 2017, and then I look at the section and see that it has had citations added to it since that time, and it seems adequate to me, then I've gone ahead and removed the template. So sometimes
editors are too bolder about adding templates than they are about removing them. They're not that bold about removing.
That's a really great observation. I have that feeling because a lot of times I'll be looking and I'll be like, okay, I'm here to help, but I don't really see that there's
I've also observed that adding templates is a form of vandalism. Just random templates.
Oh.
Vandalism.
Because it makes it,
that's like advanced vandalism.
Because it makes a page look less reliable.
Whatever, they put something up that, you can easily look at the article and say, well, that's not really a valid problem with the article. You're just
Right, just causing mischief.
mischief by putting up templates like that.
Huh. That's interesting.
Interesting fact, about a fifth of all articles in English Wikipedia have at least one of these templates.
Yeah.
I recently did a calculation on that, so.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot, and there's a lot of them, like there's one that is, the citations are not in line. Or somebody's just listed the citations at the end of the article, you know, they were copied and pasted from someplace else, so that the citations aren't integrated into the article is basically what it's saying. That's kind of an easy one to fix because you can go through and, you know, the citations are there, you just need to put them in the correct, put them in the correct
And
way.
these templates actually have levels of gravity in
Right.
terms of how big a problem is. Like the red templates are about deletions and things like that, and then we have these which are stylistic issues or verification issues. And there are some very light templates which say like, oh, there's a tone tone issue towards in this part of the prose. That can be like it's a very small thing, so it's not as
And those,
important as
and some of
these.
those are like, why didn't you just fix it
Yeah,
rather than
exactly.
slapping up the template? Like,
Yeah.
if you didn't like the tone of the article, just rewrite it.
Yeah.
You see what the problem is, go ahead and fix it. Okay, so this article is unassessed. What can we do with it? You can look at you can dig a little deeper and look on the talk page. So there haven't been a lot of 3 talk posts since 2005. This is one of those kind of ghost town articles that somebody wrote it and then it's mostly been abandoned. Somebody's with the most recent talk request was asking for references. So few contributions, unreferenced claims, and a very small number of contributing edits. So this was another thing that Monica kind of and company kind of flagged as something that I think was interesting, is like how many people have contributed to this article.
The revision history statistics are a lot of fun. And I really pointed to these as things that you can look to in addition to evaluating the way that the article is written yourself, because you are authority, or you are good at doing that kind of face evaluation, but there's other things that the page can show you about the kind of cooperation that's gone on behind the scenes.
If you know.
And so that's what this is really showing you, is how to look at these other things.
Yeah.
Gain insight.
Another thing that you can look at is how stable is an article. So is this an article that's in more of a state of becoming than others, shall we say? So is this an article that's in the middle of an edit war? So, and that's something, if you look at the history of an article, you can see that. Another signal that Wikipedia will send to you is some pages are protected to greater and lesser degrees. And that's because they're subject to vandalism, subject to people with differing views, subject to edit wars breaking out. So this page on climate change is protected, and there's different colors. Like you were saying about the templates, there's different colors for the different locks that require different levels of protection. And I don't remember what this one indicates, but there's some that like only administrators can touch, and some only verified users.
Verified, and then there's a auto confirmed user, which means that you've had an account for 4 days and you've made 10 edits, and then there's the extended confirmed, which means you've made more than 500 edits.
Right.
And so some articles are protected to only extended confirmed editors who have then shown through their actions that they're kind of committed to the ethos of Wikipedia. Of course, probably you could game it, but you'd have to do a lot of work to game it.
Yeah.
If you actually click them,
Yeah.
if you hover your mouse over them,
It
they
says-
give a text label with what kind of protection it is. If you click them, it takes you to the
Yeah.
article on protections, and it'll explain which kind of protection it is.
And if you do want to edit a page that's protected, then you could do like what you might do if you had a conflict of interest, which is post your contribution on the top page so that another editor can review it if you're not auto-confirmed.
Yep. Another thing you can do is look at the breadth of the article, like, you know, how in depth it is, like what features does it cover. Here, things to look for are in and out links. So does this article refer to other parts of the encyclopedia, or is it just orphaned off by itself and not integrated into the encyclopedia? Does it use headings? Does it have things like images or diagrams? What are the references? Does it have, you know, credible references? This, I think, should be kind of like one of the core things that we can do as librarians is go to that references section and look at not only the number of references, but also the types of references that they represent. And also external links can also be a signal of how good the article is. This is kind of, you know, this is what.
Oh, I'm just laughing at this, like, making this slide, sorry.
Yeah, so you know, the article can take you to many places. So, you know, and this is kind of the point, is that Wikipedia can be a jumping off point for further exploration or further research. Hopefully, people are going to find their way back to the library, right? To find some of those. If you can't get to this white paper, then, you know, hopefully some of those links will take you back to, you'll remember, oh, the library has that book, or the library has a subscription to that journal, I'll go to the library.
I didn't want to interrupt, but like the Thurber group is about to leave, so if anybody was from the whole 30 Thurber group.
Thank you. We're going to wrap up very shortly. Reference diversity is just, you know, again, is it kind of citing all the same thing? Are they all books that are, you know, is it all citations for a single book by a single author? It might have like a whole bunch of references.
Thank you.
Thank you for revisiting your slide.
Thank you for revisiting.
But, you know, one thing I've seen quite a bit are people who are just calling the same, you know, they're referencing the same thing over and over again. So in a single, so it has a lot of citations, but it's really only citing one or two sources. So that's also a sign of a not very well developed there. And then, and then also, right, so in this article that is important but is not well developed, it only has two poorly formatted URLs to articles from UK daily papers. So surely we can do better with this particular.
Be interested to see the Arabic version of that.
Right?
It's probably a lot more developed.
Right? Yeah. You think so? So the Cat's Cradle article has, you know, 3 how-to books, a cultural glossary book, 2 records books, an academic book, and 2 websites. So it actually has, you know, a fair amount of diversity in this unassessed article, and no dead links in the external resources, which is great. I mean, almost amazing, because a lot of dead links on Wikipedia, as there are other things. The climate change article has got, you know, you can kind of see here that there's just a ton of references and links to pretty authoritative sources. So, and finally, the authority of contributors can help you to, so you can go into the edit history and you can see who's been editing the article, and then you can follow links to kind of see what have these editors been up to generally. Are they people who've been with the project for a long time? Do they contribute on a regular basis? You know, you can do some snooping around. It's totally fine. That's, you know, you shouldn't feel like you're doing anything bad here. And you can look at the number of edit counts that people have, and you know, do they seem to be kind and considerate and consistent editors, which takes some doing. So this is kind of probably the most difficult thing to do, or the most maybe not difficult, but time-consuming thing to do, is to kind of look through and see what the contribution record is of various edits. And yes, there are robot Wikipedians. So there's a number, I think, Honor earlier was talking about the robot Wikipedians, and they go through and do helpful tasks as well.
To piggyback on that, if you do find people that are on an article that are really experienced, those are also really good resources to reach out to be like, if you need help or if you want second opinions, because those are normally the kind of people who are going to be on every day.
Right.
Which is really helpful.
Yeah, that's a good tip, is that Wikipedians they're on Wiki, and that's how they communicate, leaving messages for them on their talk page or tweeting them. Otherwise can be a great way to contact them. Yeah. Also, coming to events like this and meeting one another is also a really good way to develop your network and your resources. Okay, so we were going to do some evaluating articles. We're going to skip that because we don't really have time. But I can leave you at the end of this with some articles that I think would be interesting for you to go away and kind of use your evaluation skills and think about what what potential those articles have or where they're really problematic. And that would be a good kind of like follow-on exercise for you to do. So Janos had some tips and tricks, not trips, for using Wikipedia at the reference desk, which I thought were really helpful. So, when he's evaluating articles, he looks for these templates that we talked about, the big scary ones, things that have numerous warnings about things, strong writing or lack of strong writing, clarity, neutrality, length. Unfortunately, length can sometimes be an indicator that an article is better. Not everything's as terse as it could be. Is it properly formatted? Does it use headings? Does it look like somebody paid attention to the formatting? And does it have a coherent lead for a longer article? Looking at the citations and looking again for the diversity of the citations, the quality of the resources, looking at the talk pages. So has there been discussion? Has it been civil? Is it a ghost town? These are all things you can do with unassessed articles. And then looking at the history, who's contributed, how frequently, is it an active page or was it created 7 years ago and basically abandoned? So these are techniques that looking at the contributors, so here you can look for like rollbacks. So a lot of kind of like, is there seem to be an edit war going on, or are people kind of like nicely adding to the article, or does it seem like there's something weird going on? And you can always kind of roll these back to see, not roll them back, but you can click on them to see what the difference is between the two of them. And then looking at the talk pages for various, if there are frequent contributors that have, this would be a very bad one, like your account has been blocked indefinitely, but I definitely have seen this where people who've been working on a particular page, you go and look at you wonder why did they stop editing? Oh, because they were blocked, or oh, because they got in a big fight with somebody and then they walked away. So you can see some of that on talk pages. So Janos, who gave, I thought that this was one of my favorite webinars in the class, talked about how he uses Wikipedia at the reference desk. Definitely great for pop culture, definitions, sports. Use Wikipedia to get no answers. There wasn't a sequel, or it only lasted for 2 seasons, or it's based on a book. So it's great for that kind of thing. But think again, is this a topic that is really one of Wikipedia's strengths? Or does it, like if you're looking for a Star Trek character, you're in business. But if you're looking for, I don't know, topics on librarianship, for example, are terrible for Wikipedia. Again, desperately for your help. Eric, you could make that page on VF better, and I think that the world would be a better place. I don't know who else is going to do it, frankly. So yeah, what are the stakes? So Janusz is a reference librarian, Wikipedia, unabashed user of Wikipedia as a reference source at the reference desk at the right time. So this has gone due mostly to lovely conversation from you all. We've gone a little longer than I anticipated, and I probably also dragged on at the beginning longer than I could have. But at this point, I would pause and do article evaluation. So giving people, these are the 3 articles that I would suggest that people take a look at. The infant sleep training article is kind of a hoot, as is this Telecom Village is kind of troubled in a different way. Hurricane Michael is just one that I pulled out because it's always really interesting to look at articles that are on current events and kind of use that, the skills to look at the edit history and the article development and the sources that are used. Unfortunately, anytime some kind of crisis or emergency or natural disaster pops up, it's really instructive to see how those articles are developed and the types of sources that are used at the beginning versus, like, if you looked at Hurricane, what was a big one from last year? Andrew.
Yeah.
If you look at the Hurricane Andrew article in its state now versus what it looked like a year ago, the state of the citations would be probably pretty different. So I encourage you to take advantage of frequent and recurring national disasters to get a better understanding of how Wikipedia works.
It must generally work pretty well because in the things I patrol for, stuff like that hardly ever comes up.
Yeah, there must be people who are just like, that's what they love to do is kind of be the town reporter and article, and that can be a great place to go, fortunately, because those articles are so, there's a group of, storm chasers or something that seem to, have you noticed that it's consistently kind of like the same group of people or?
No, because I haven't spent a lot of time looking at it.
Okay.
But
Maybe. That's all I have for you today. I'm going to be here for the rest of the conference, and I'm not going anywhere just now. I don't have a tour to run off to, so I'd be happy to talk to any of you more in depth. Thank you so much for coming today, and I hope this was useful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. I'm sure that was a complete snooze fest for you, but
no, it could have gone faster, but there were parts of it.
thank you.
Good.
I'm glad.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Part of the process is sort of conveying where there is utility. I feel like library work goes with the can't.
Right, we can't. But you can, and I think that, kind of recognizing that, yeah, there are quality issues, and I think that Wikipedia would acknowledge that. So what I hope to impart to people are some of these work that we have been around for a long time, know so well that they can't even articulate that. It's hard to articulate, like when you see something that's like not right on Wikipedia, like you just kind of know it.
After a while it comes intuitive. And requires you can explain why this is an issue versus you might even see a similar thing on another page and you might not be as big of a deal, or it's pretty hard to summarize.
Yeah.
Experience matters.
It's not a science, it's an art.
Yeah.
This is true, but assessing quality
Yeah, yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you.
How are you doing?
Hey, good.
Yeah. Sorry we didn't see you in London. That would have been awesome.
I know. And that was right before you guys got beach too,
That's right, yeah.
So, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I've seen you since then.
No, yeah, it was her, I probably mentioned it was her
Yes.
PhD graduation ceremony
Yeah.
at UCL. And, yeah.
Bye, see you around.
I left before you woke up this morning because I had a flight out of DC. My flight left
Oh, dark 30.
for serious, yeah. What's new with you? Congrats on the book again, also, and thank you for sending it off.
Thank you.
As somebody who's long, had like basically an idea to either write or compile, writing on Wikipedia. I'm impressed.
Well, I didn't, most of what I did is because library professionals, so kind of a literacy around.
Yeah.
And you can put as many case studies as you want.
Something like that.
Right.
So putting a book out there was actually somebody else told me that.
You should do that.
Yeah, said, well, actually, it was at the end of a project we had done, and she said, the most useful thing you could do for me at this point is make sure that there are writing opportunities for my early career students. And, journal articles are great, but they have to do the work to get those published, to develop an article, pitch to a journal, and get it accepted. And she said, if you could do a book on all of these different projects you do, include some of the
Jeff certainly worked for.
and I'm not a I have such an entrepreneurial I'm not,
Yeah, we're talking about.
unfortunately not in a position where I have to worry about.
Okay, right. Well,
So I didn't do it for myself.
You were seeking tenure?
No, I work for OCLC, so we don't have like a tenure system like that, so. Yeah, so. Right.
Yes.
No, absolutely.
Well, another parliamentary, I talked about that, so Dr. Key, well, he was a specialist in my medical.
I could definitely go eat.
Yeah, you guys should go. I'm gonna see Bruce.
Oh, Brucey actually is pretty good.
With the structure of the executive, it's really
Okay. You can convince
We
me.
said here are-
I want to make
Alright, I'm
sure
gonna
that.
I gotta head down to the arts right, so I'll meet you guys there.
Okay, I want to make sure that Andrew gets his stuff back,
Oh,
so.
you want?
Oh, that's all, miss?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think I saw him. He's here.
Should I just bring it down to
The
the,
rest of the conference? Yeah.
just bring it down to the
Yeah.
auditorium?
Right. I think he's down there. When I was walking this way,
Yeah,
I did see him
okay,
see off with the crowd and turn back.
yeah.
Doesn't mean he's definitely there now, but he was there as of.
Yeah,
Gotta
so
go.
I did the book more as like an
Yeah.
influence, like, look, here's a book on Wikipedia libraries, like, if you're not gonna take this seriously now, like,
Yeah.
what do I have to do?
Yeah.
But, and it was less to do with my own career advancement.
Oh,
So
sure.
I think, and that was a better place to be in, rather than like, I'm desperate to get something published because I needed to get a job someplace. But now I do have that, so that's great.
I was invited by Zach McDowell and Joseph Riegel to submit an essay for a book they're going to be putting together through MIT Press.
Oh, I don't know if you want this on tape.
That was not privileged information.
I know. I just thought it was funny.